hands really a bit worse. So I said to the surgeon, being young and rather cocky, I said, why don't you treat him with hypnotism? Because I thought this was warts. And the surgeon looked at me pityingly and said, why don't you? And walked out of the theater.
It's long been known that hypnosis can sometimes make warts vanish, although no one truly knows why. Mason himself had used the technique several times with great success, and so the very next day, he hypnotized the boy.
And I said to him, the warts will fall off your right arm and new skin will grow, which will be soft and normal. And I sent him away and told him to come back in a week.
When the boy returned, it was clear the hypnosis had worked. In fact, the change was startling. This is the boy's arm before hypnosis. And here it is after Mason had hypnotized him.
And I smiled and I said, well, that's very good. We'll go and show Mr. Moore, the surgeon. And took the boy around to the theater. And Moore was operating at the time with the big glass windows there in East Grinstead. And I stood outside and I held up both these boys' arms, the one untreated and the one treated. And Moore looked, and his eyes became like saucers, and he handed his knife over to his assistant and came out, and he looked at this. He said, good God. I said, well, I told you warts go. He said, warts? This isn't warts, he said. This is congenital ichthyosiform erythrodermia of Brock. He was born with it. It's incurable.
What Albert Mason had done was impossible. This young boy had been born with a condition which made his skin thickened and cracked like an elephant's hide. Victims suffer endless skin infections which ultimately prove fatal. Most die in childhood. But Albert Mason's patient lived. New pink skin grew on almost all his body. It saved his life, and the young Londoner, who had been badly bullied at school because of his strange appearance, was able to return to a normal life, purely because of the power of suggestion, which is a key component of the placebo effect. When the case was published in the British Medical Journal in 1952, the world's media went wild.
Thousands of people phoned in. They had to put a special operator on the switchboard, letters poured in, and overnight I was in this bewildering situation. Time magazine came and photographed me and put it in there next to Katharine Hepburn. Every congenital ichthyotic within 1,000 miles came. There weren't many, it's a very rare disease. And I attempted to treat them, and none of the others responded at all. Not a smidgen.
Mason was never again able to repeat that first incredible success. And he thinks he knows why.
I now knew it was incurable. Beforehand, I thought it was warts, and I had a conviction, I can kill warts. After that first case, I was acting. I knew it had no right to get well. And you know, I'm sure that was conveyed.
The case of the elephant skin boy forced Albert Mason to look beyond conventional medicine for answers. Today, he lives in Beverly Hills, California, where he is a top psychoanalyst. He last saw the elephant skin boy more than 40 years ago, but he has never forgotten him and never stopped wondering. After a long search, we found the elephant skin boy, who is now a 67-year-old man. He has no children, but is married and lives here in London. Amazingly, he is still clear of the terrible skin condition that should have killed him when he was a child. But Albert Mason never disclosed publicly his identity because it was his patient's only chance of a normal life. It enabled one of the most celebrated cases in medical history to slip back into the shadows, and it's where he wants to stay. But in this one case, there lies hope for all our futures, the possibility of mind over medicine. Working out exactly what combination of sights, sounds, and symbols can cure the incurable will continue to be one of the greatest challenges for the top scientists who have gathered in this remote corner of Ireland. Still to come, too, is how to harness the placebo effect without lying to us.
There's a widespread feeling that placebos only work if you don't know you're being given them. But that's because the assumption is that if you are given a placebo and you know it, you'll think you're being given a fake drug. And why should you get better from a fake drug? But what if we now believe that placebos are real medicines? Then today, being given a placebo means being given this sexy new thing coming out of mind-body medicine that's all the rage in the press. And so it's perfectly plausible to imagine that someone being given a placebo today would have a positive reaction to it.
I'm very excited about what's happening. I think finally...
Revolutions in science rarely happen overnight, but this week will be remembered as the week that 5 scientists from completely different fields found a common voice.
That's great. Am I the only one?
I think this is
I just wasn't expecting that. Usually we just kind of pop in to disagree with one another. You know, that's the silence of agreement.
No, we had a remarkable...
Thanks to this group, there is now a focused placebo agenda on the table for the first time. Properly harnessed, these experts believe that the placebo effect could cut the cost of health care by 1/3, that we'll need to take fewer drugs, and the ones we do take will be more effective, that we'll need fewer surgical procedures with all their risks, that it will help our doctors fulfill their true potential as healers and give us, their patients, unprecedented control over our own health. Indeed, it's considered so important that in 2001, U.S. government health agencies dedicated more than $5 million to placebo research. It means that the Irish Task Force and others can now continue their work to determine how best to exploit the placebo effect. But for now, it's time to unwind and reflect.
This thing is big. We can see how a smile or a kiss can be transformed into a physiological process which could make me a healthier person. It's about as big as it gets because it cuts right to the core of what we are as human beings.
Potentially, this will be remembered as the era when the placebo effect came of age. It's fantastic to be part of it. It seems like